When reading plays or short stories, we often overlook the credibility of the setting and background. The setting provides several pretenses like time period and location, which are vital to understanding a story. Throughout the play, Jack was able to proudly flaunt the magnitude of his wealth, which brings up the question whether or not Jack's claim of having a country house, about 1,500 acres, and a house in Belgrave Square was even a possibility during the Victorian era. Knowing that the importance of being earnest is a satirical play poking fun at the idle lifestyle of aristocrats, it is important to be aware that the characters' wealth are likely exaggerated. We first need to analyze England's economic status at the time. Victorian? How about victory? Victory? No, more like industry. The Victorian era marked England's industrial revolution and its growing economy, so Wilde's depiction of Jack's immense wealth could have been somewhat unrealistic. Before the setting could be deemed credible, Jack's income must first be considered. Jack has claimed that he earns between 7,000 to 8,000 shillings a year, translating to about 500,000 US dollars today, all from stocks rather than from the large sum of land he owns. With the stock market becoming the financial heart of the nation, Jack would be considered one of the few individuals residing in the upper class, which at the time owned most of England's money and land. Considering the economic despair the majority of England's population was experiencing at the time, being able to own a house in Belgrave Square and a countryside estate during Victorian England seems almost unrealistic. However, because of Jack's absurd income placing him among the handful of aristocrats at the time, the setting of the play deems credible.
In The Importance of Being Earnest, Oscar Wilde uses the story's setting to emphasize the contradictions of Victorian society by contrasting this setting with the behavior of the characters. There is a prevalent idea, especially in Victorian society, that the quality of a man's hearth and home is reflective of the quality of his character. This can also be generalized to include politeness, i.e., a person that is polite is likely also good. Wilde uses this idea to create expectations about the characters that are subverted as the story progresses. Because of the description of his flat as luxuriously and artistically furnished, Algernon comes off as focused and attentive to detail. This creates the expectation that he would be especially considerate of others because the good effort he puts into managing his home may be spent on other aspects of life as well. However, once Algernon and Jack were revealed as not earnest, Algernon is the exact opposite of considerate. Out of unhappiness, he proceeds to eat muffins in the presence of Jack, to Jack's annoyance. Conventionally, an individual's true colors show in times of crises, so Algernon's actions indicate that the content of his character is worse than expected. The amount of subversion or irony of wrong expectations may not be much for a modern audience, but for a Victorian audience it is strongly felt and calls into question the Victorian belief that higher class implies moral virtue.
Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest serves as commentary on the dishonesty and duplicity of the usual Victorian character. By establishing multifaceted characters Algernon and Jack as Bunburyists, Wilde introduces the significance of setting when organizing the drama's events, while also exaggerating the fraudulence hidden beneath Victorian social norms. For instance, Algernon explains that Jack has invented a very useful younger brother called Earnest, in order that he may be able to come up to town as often as he likes, as Algernon has also invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that he may be able to go down into the country whenever he chooses. Algernon and Jack's alternative personalities rely only on their position in the contrasting settings of the country and the town. Wilde's introduction of both Jack and Algernon as Bunburyists allows for drama-defining events, such as Algernon's unexpected visit to Jack's home, to occur. Under the guise of Jack's fictitious brother, Earnest, Algernon confesses to Jack that he has come down from town to apologize for his, as told by Jack, offensive lifestyle. Algernon's appearance in Jack's country household serves as one of many instances of setting, gravely impacting the organization of events throughout the drama.
Throughout the play, it is easily apparent that different views regarding marriage are expressed. While some believe marriage is pleasant, others have a more distasteful view in comparison. An example of this unpleasant view is expressed by Gwendolen when she remarks, "The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man, and certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not?" Revealing a major flaw within Victorian marriages. It highlights the lack of companionship resulting from marriage without the compatibility in love, suggesting that a Victorian husband requires alcohol and a mistress to be happy. Additionally, with Gwendolyn's remark, she discusses the changing gender roles that have directly affected marriages during this time period. Marriage had remained a woman's sole occupation and goal, which made economic sense but did not create domestic harmony, further highlighting the negative side of Victorian marriages. On the other hand, marriage is also briefly depicted as pleasant or containing actual real love. This can be seen through Jack, who falls in love with the self-absorbed Gwendolyn, even though she does not reciprocate that love, and Dr. Chasuble and Miss Prism, although old, marry for the sake of love. With both perspectives, Wilde has brought out the complex nature of marriage and in the morality of Victorian society, focusing on how marriages feed on wealth and social status.
The Importance of Being Earnest is rich with complex characters who represent their insincere ways either hypocritically or inventively in a Victorian setting. For instance, Jack claims that the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl, describing it as a societal normality. Jack's statement has some backing to it due to the nature of Victorian men to keep business and work matters independent of a relationship. However, his reasoning that lying to women of class is flawed in that it instead reveals his own deceitful nature. Jack's moral hypocrisies are further outlined when he demonstrates frustration with Algernon's Bunburyism, a similar lie of sorts, to get out of social situations and unwanted interactions. Bunbury is just one way Algernon exhibits the way his cunning nature can be interpreted as more inventive than untrustworthy. To gain Cecily's hand in marriage, he has only to impersonate the emotional character which Cecily creates in her description of the letter she receives in order to pretend that he's in fact Ernest, Jack's brother. While Algernon's wits steer him clear of minor mishaps and even secure him a marriage with the girl of his dreams, his personality does most of the work. He is surprisingly well-dressed and has exceptional manners with women, as prescribed by Victorian-age morals. These factors allow him to act smartly in diverse dilemmas, even if they are not always carried out in the most truthful form. However, the most hypocritical character of all is Lady Bracknell, who claims that she does not approve of mercenary marriages. She is known to have married her husband, Lord Bracknell, due to his immense wealth in a time when she was relatively poor in comparison. Her duplicitous remark serves to appease the societal norms and give herself an aura of humility, when in reality, her idea of a high standing in society is driven mainly by monetary values.
In fact, the ideas of hypocrisy and morality are intertwined throughout the play, as both comedy and wordplay are used to satirize the characters' actions and thoughts that lead them to play into the era's social standards of absurd class customs and social conventions. For example, when Algernon exclaims that the lower orders don't set them a good example, he blames the lower classes for his and his upper-class peers' lack of morality. But in reality, typical belief during this era was that upper-class morals and ethics would trickle down to the lower class, and that the upper class would and should set the example for their social inferiors to follow. Algernon's claim that the lower orders ought to set the example is the exact opposite of what one would typically think for this time. And while Wilde and the audience are certainly aware of this, Algernon seems to live in a blissful upper-class state of ignorance, allowing Wilde to further his point that this was an era in which the whole Victorian idea of morality as a set of principles to follow was ridiculous. Even in this poster for production of The Importance of Being Earnest, one can see how Victorian ideals forced people to compromise themselves for what they believed to be socially right. In the poster, we can see two images of a man, hinting at the bun-burying nature of the characters in the play, who use their alter egos as an escape from the constricting social facade of Victorian society, further emphasizing at how Victorian society was an era attached to the ideas of earnestness, which pressurized individuals to live double lives, concealing their true natures and leading them to disregard their morals.